but I know when something's great because when I share it with somebody and it makes them feel something, I know I fucking did what I was trying to do. And I know that it's not because they intellectually got it. It's because they felt what I was trying to get them to feel. And usually for me to get them to feel, at some point in that game, I have to feel it too. I have to feel it first. This is Way of the Artist with Brandon Colby Cook and Evan Schulte.
Exploring the challenges of the creative call
so that you can claim your own path
and make your life a work of art.
Welcome to another episode of the show. This one is called Engaging with the Elemental. So, we're talking about getting real with things. We're talking about, getting into things. Something that I've been working through personally, I guess I'll start with this, is there's some lessons that I've learned, in the last little bit. And I've been like, oh man, why this have to be so hard? I'm kind of like bitching and moaning about it a little bit and just being like, life feels like it's on hard and why is this so difficult? And then, and I try not to complain. I try to be grateful for lessons, but sometimes you're in it and it's just hard. And I had this realization, just this awareness. I suppose I was kind of aware of it, but it's like when you get it, like it just makes sense to you, like you really accept it, I suppose. And I was like, there was no way for me to learn this unless I felt the elements, unless I felt kind of the cold, put my hands in the mud, got a little dirty, had to navigate this emotional experience that came up from it. And, I do believe that when you try to avoid a lesson in life, you are deemed to repeat it indefinitely until you are willing to overcome it. And you will get essentially stuck there and it'll keep coming up and keep coming up and keep coming up. And I think we live in a time where distraction is an acceptable way for us to deal with our problems and challenges. And I think that that's not a good thing. And, I look at what had come up over the last little bit and I realize, oh yeah, I have a lot of avoidance strategies. I have a lot of ways of deflecting. I have a lot of ways of numbing the feeling that comes up because I don't like the feeling. And all these are just like creative ways for me to avoid this. But in this particular case, a lot of these strategies weren't working. And I feel like this is what happens. Like eventually you just get pushed hard enough and it's like, okay, this feeling is here. And also the desire for something to move beyond the level you're in, if you want to call it that, is too great for you to deflect, deny, distract, or whatever. So anyway, I feel like I pushed through it. I made it through. I raised to the next level. Great, that's exciting. But the thing is that in doing that, I had to feel some stuff. I had to go through some experiences and like I quite literally had to live it. And this is a lot of what spurred this conversation on for me and my side of it. Evan also found his way here, but I think a little bit differently. But it's all kind of led us to the same ultimate place. And yeah, it's like, there's like if you're just in theory, you're not really doing it. You're not really living, you're not learning, you're not creating, and you might actually be experiencing some real negative effects of just living in theory. And I think we do it because we think, hey, I want to make the clay model, but I don't want to get my hands dirty. And we know in that example, that doesn't make sense. Yet in life, we don't treat it like that. We think we can somehow make the clay model and somehow not get our hands dirty as well. And it's the same thing. So that's the best I can start off with. And I'm going to pass it on to Evan.
And if you do actually get your hands on the clay, you're just trying to do it perfectly and trying to do it without leaving room for mistakes or error. Like there's no room. It's this sort of thing where we've almost mechanized ourselves. We have a mechanistic view of what we are as human beings, I think, today. And that is, we can get down some rabbit holes, I think, with this one, but like that's a big product of the intellect where we often we just view our bodies as like a machine with components and things like that. And it's just like, well, it's not really exactly what we are. Like there's some truth behind it. I think that's part of the issue with some of the things that we're going to be getting into in this conversation, is that power of the intellect, powerful as it is, has its limitations, and we're coming up and into those limitations. And there's signs of that everywhere. I think it's really easy to find, and I think we'll probably explore a lot of those in this conversation. But I love that instead of using the word like engage with the real in this, because I think that is a bit problematic. I like that we're using this word elemental, and I really want to key in on that word because, elemental, like there's so much richness in that word, like the elements, like you're saying, it's the dirt, it's the earth, it's the water, it's the fire, like it's tactile, it's visceral, it's I just looked up before we started this, like what's the origin of that word, and it means like the principle, like getting down to like the thing, and the intellect is not the principle. As much as we kind of go around in our world behaving in that kind of way, right? Like it's like this thing is the thing that rules and governs all things, and yet it quite simply doesn't. Like you were talking about just a moment ago, something about learning lessons, like how we learn lessons in life. And there's that thing that you've often said, I think you might have got it from like Tony Robbins or something, but this is something that lots of people have said before, but it's like, you will change and you will learn, you will grow when it gets painful enough, right? Pain is elemental, right? That is like, and our emotional body, if that doesn't offend anybody's sensibilities too much for me to put it that way, but that is an elemental thing. Doesn't give a shit about how much you try to rationalize it and intellectualize your feelings, right? A lot of people will discover this, and have discovered this through certain kinds of therapies and things like that, where it's just like intellectualizing things doesn't always give you catharsis, right? It doesn't give you breakthroughs, doesn't make you change the pattern, but sometimes pain does. Something gets painful enough that the change occurs, right? And that's, I think, a place where we can consider the elemental as playing a role, right? Because it's getting down to the actual fact of something. It's like, hey, this thing that you're doing fucking hurts.
Yeah.
Stop pretending like it doesn't. Stop pretending like you can just deal with it. Stop pretending like you can just numb it. You can't. And again, this is like, and bring it into the art space, right? This is why we still have story, why it's still so essential, why music is so essential, because we find catharsis in these things. We find you said this, I think, in our last podcast, you're talking about actors, but music as well, like a certain performance, you see an actor really going through something, experiencing something, and the emotion is real that they're going through. And it gives us just a little window to just feel that for ourselves, because sometimes we can't even go into it. It's too wild, right? It's too raw. Wild might be another important word in this one, to our wildness. There's a wildness about who we are as human beings that, again, I think we try to use our intellects to make ourselves so nice and neat and tidy. And it's like, but we're not. Yeah. Human beings, we have a propensity to fuck things up. And that's a part of who we are. Yeah. We're not machines, right? And trying to make ourselves that way is actually part of the thing that is making us crazy. But coming back to what I was saying, sometimes we need that piece of art, that thing that actually helps us connect to something that's real, and tap us into, in some small way, giving ourselves permission and allowance to feel a certain thing. That's there. That's always there. But it's not nice. It's not neat. It's something we wish wasn't there. But it's elemental. It's principle. It's not going anywhere, right? At least not right now. At least not until it's given its opportunity. And I think the last thing I wanted to just go into was just with the word elemental one more time here is, and I was saying this to you beforehand, and I'm sure any regular listener has heard me say this before, but one of our favorite philosophers, Alan Watts, has this phrase in, I can't remember if it was a book or a lecture, but the word water doesn't get you wet. And I think that contains a lot of, at least for me, what I'm saying in this podcast and in this particular episode, and part of the predicament that we find ourselves in today's day and age, where there is that confusion, where it's just where we've tried to substitute our idea for the thing instead of getting out into it, right? Where it's like, we'll maybe read some author talking about, just this pouring, drenching rain coming down, or we'll see some movie where that's captured in some way. We look outside and we see it, and we're just like, oh, well, I'll just stay inside. Thank you. I mean, hey, I get that intuition to not do that. But there can be something so valuable to just going out and getting into it. When's the last time you just felt that? When you can sometimes embrace the elements, right? Go out and embrace the elements in a small way, and it can connect you to something in yourself that is so vital, so important, that in a way it's like I can't even necessarily say much about it, because that would be to intellectualize the thing. But to go out and to experience it, to feel it, really feel it. And what that connects you to in yourself is something so vital.
Wow, lots said, man. Lots said. Okay, well, so I want to go into the feeling of pain, and I think just there's some things around this I think are important to talk about. I'm pretty sure my dad did get this from like Tony Robbins and some other speakers, but he used to always say, enough pain and you will change. It was something that was said commonly in my household, but that's not as simple of a comment as it may seem on the surface. So like, if you make pain your God, you're in real trouble. You're real trouble. And I think that modern day world has. I think most people have made pain their God, in the sense that they fear pain so much that they do anything to avoid it. And that's why we have all these pills and these like drugs and these medications and all these things that we do. It's all to just avoid pain. I think I want to counter that idea. You need something to be painful enough so that the pain you shouldn't avoid is something you will go towards. Example of this: what would you crawl through broken glass for? Now, some people don't have something that they would crawl through broken glass for. That is a problem. And the thing is that, think about that, right? Just like really think about what that would be like. Theoretically, you could think about what it would be like to try to crawl through glass. The other night I was cooking some food. Here's a good example of pain and how pain can kind of sneak up on you in ways you don't expect. I was making some food, and I was making a pretty big bunch of meals, right? I was prepping. And as I made the meal and I got everything ready for the night and I set aside a certain portion of it, there was a whole other half that I was about to deal with. And then I was filling up a plate, and it was a porcelain plate, and I filled up it was kind of a bowl actually. And as I was filling up the bowl, all of a sudden the heat just kind of transferred through it, and it was burning my hand so bad that I literally I could not I guess I just couldn't hang on to it anymore. It wasn't even a thought. It just let it go, drop it. Like when pain hurts so much, you literally, like, you have an instinctual response to let go of whatever that is. Cause like this burning feeling was like, hey, you're going to melt my skin kind of burning. Right. So I drop it. I drop my food on the floor. It drops porcelain on the floor. Porcelain and the food just goes poof everywhere. And the porcelain broke in so many tiny little pieces that it just went in the food and went in everything. And I was like, oh man. Anyway, so that's annoying. And I'm like looking at it, I'm going, okay, well, what's the lesson here? Like what am I learning? Well, first of all, pain doesn't care, so like, I was annoyed with myself. I was upset with myself. I just wasted a whole bunch of food. I just spent a bunch of time cooking. And I was like, and those thoughts come up like, oh, you idiot, what are you doing? I was trying to beat myself up about it, doing all this stuff. At the end of the day, it was a mistake. We have a propensity to fuck things up. It's a mistake. And I've burnt my hand before. I've dropped food before. I've done this kind of stuff before. But in this case, I thought I was okay. And the way I grabbed it, turned out I wasn't. I dropped the thing, burned my hand, made a mess. This is a good example of life. This is how a lot of life works, right? You experience pain, and then it causes something else in your life to happen. And now you have that to deal with. And there are people who they make a mess and they try to sweep it under the rug. Well, if I swept this under the rug, it would be a big problem later. Big problem later. It would rot, it would smell, there'd be shards of glass everywhere. Okay, so I had to put my meal down. Well, I think I might even just swept most of it aside, ate my meal that was warm, put the rest of the meal that was prepared to the side, clean this up. And I'm looking around to make sure I got everything, and it just smashed in the worst way, right? So porcelain shards went everywhere. And I thought I did it. Next couple days, I'm walking around, I'm like barefoot in my kitchen. All of a sudden I step on a piece of porcelain that just didn't get caught. Slices my foot, and and I'm just like, now I got like essentially a piece of glass in my foot, right? Well, crawl through that. Imagine, like, so you get these little touches of like, what would that be like? So you don't even know, right? You don't even know what that'd be like. Cause like one little shard on my foot was enough to like make me stop in my tracks, right? One little hot bowl was enough to make me stop in my tracks, right? So I think we have this idea that we're so much more capable than we really are, and we don't know. And a lot of I'm not saying that you necessarily want to find pain, but you want to find purpose greater than the pain you'll experience in life. And I think that one of the challenges a lot of people have is they think of their body as a vehicle that just moves their head around. And the thing is that and we kind of like, the world seems to work that way, but I would argue adamantly that it doesn't. And I would argue that's why there's so many addictions, so many like vices, so many distractions, so many things that people do where they just avoid feeling anything at all. Because they're not only are they lacking purpose, they're essentially what's the word? They're like they're honoring they're making pain sacred. This pain is a part of the experience of life. And the thing is that you need to find something that you want to push through the pain for. And when you transcend temporary pain for purposeful passion, that's where you evolve. And that's what your brain actually wants. I believe that's what your body and your brain want. It wants to know what it can transcend. It does not want you to be comfortable all the time. In fact, your body, like sweeping stuff under the rug, when you get comfortable for too long, it's like rotting food under a rug. That's the best example and analogy I could give you. It's the same idea. And we live in this world where comfort is just cherished. Oh, I just want to be comfortable. I want to feel good. I want to be happy. Fuck that. Happiness it's not about happiness. Happiness is a great thing and I love it. It's so great when it happens, but it's temporary and it's so elusive. It's going to go away. What you want to find is joy pain, which is passion. You got to find joy in the pain. You got to find things that you're willing to go beyond. So like working out, people who get passionate about working out, they like the burn in their muscles. They like the pain. They want more of it. They're looking for it. And, people who are intellectually like just at it, like they love a problem that's difficult to solve. For me creatively, like it's kind of like that. When I'm working on a story and I'm trying to solve a problem in that story, it's a little bit painful because it's a little bit frustrating and it's a little annoying, but it gets my mind and my body. I'm like, and sometimes I cannot intellectually get through the problem. And this is the last thing I'll say before I pass it on to you. I have to literally tap into some type of emotion. I have to go feel my way through this problem. And when I feel my way through the problem, all of a sudden the answer comes like night and day. It's like, boom, it's so clear, so obvious. But I'm always, I'm using my intellect. I'm using all the lessons I've learned, all the books I've read, all the techniques I have. That's usually my first approach, because if I can solve it the easy way, quote unquote, I'll do that. But a lot of the time when you want to write great work, when you want to do something that's really good, and I know it's great, here's the thing why I know it's great. And I'm not saying I've put together anything great that has been one whole cohesive thing that has made a big impact on the world. But I know when something's great because when I share it with somebody and it makes them feel something, I know I fucking did what I was trying to do. And I know that it's not because they intellectually got it. It's because they felt what I was trying to get them to feel. And usually for me to get them to feel, at some point in that game, I have to feel it too. I have to feel it first.
Yeah, I would say that, I'll maybe this is what you intended and what you said, but just something I'll kind of come back at you with a little bit here is I also don't think it's about looking for pain.
No.
Yeah, I didn't think is what you're saying. It's like, because you said like there's people, they look for the pain. They look, and it's just like, well, that can be a problem too. It's not about looking for pain, but it's not about avoiding it and turning away from it when it arises, because it's an inevitable part of life, right? The problem is the turning away, the avoiding, the numbing to when it occurs, right? Because there's something that's so important that's happening there, right? There's something that is so essential in that for us as human beings. Like my wife, I remember her when she first described grief, when she was going through grief from some family members who kind of all been, who all kind of went within a pretty close timeline. And she had described grief as deep love cascading through your body. Like, because that grief is this thing that's this acknowledgement of love that you had for somebody, that love that you still have for somebody, right? And it's this weird kind of beautiful thing that comes out of just this, this pain. But it's like, if you didn't have the love, there wouldn't be the pain of the thing. And that is always an interesting thing to reconcile, right? But there's beauty there if in recognizing the love, coming back to, as we've talked about on this in this podcast before, it's like, where's the love? You got to come back and find the love, and that will often see you through. But I want to come back to something else in what you were saying, which is you're talking about something that you would, crawl through the glass for, something that you go through pain because there's something that's more important to you than your own sense of, being comfortable. And I also wanted to say as well, hey, there's a place for being comfortable.
Yeah.
That's a part of life too.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, you go out for that, like you get out into the wet and the cold and the elements. Like I was saying before, you come back in, you have yourself a nice hot bath or shower. Oh shit, man, that's some good stuff too, right? But it's like there's something that's missing when you're just always trying to be comfortable, right? There's something that you're shutting yourself off from.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to pass it right back to you, but I want to say this. Comfort is so much better when you don't have it all the time. It's fine to be comfortable. Like I was out for a cold day. I'll just show this one example. Out for a cold day, we played soccer in the pouring rain. It was cold. It's fall season. Everyone's drenched. We just had a shower, right? Like in this cold water. And came back. I had some nice like chicken soup. It was glorious. But that chicken soup was so good because of that rainy soccer game.
Oh yeah, it's like in the cold time of year, especially there's those little things because again, elemental, like this is another thing too about this idea. The seasons don't give a shit about whatever we think of it. They're happening. Yeah. They're occurring. And that cold comes in and you just have to experience it. Yeah. You just have to feel it. Same thing with the summertime too. It's like that heat is sometimes so intense, but that's shit that reminds you that you're a human being, that you're alive. Like you are experiencing stuff in the world. You're not just an idea of a human being. You are a real being that is responding to the world and the world is responding to you. Like there's something very real and tactile. But yeah, I'm just thinking like, yeah, the cold weather and then you like go into, maybe you come home or you poke into like a coffee shop or something. And you just like, you get a hot drink and you wrap your hands around that cup and it's just so hot, it just warms up your cold hands. Like there's just these things that are, you just like, it brings a smile to my face thinking about that kind of thing. Maybe it brings a smile to your face on the other end too. Cause it's like, oh yeah, I know that feeling. And it's like, and there's something that's so joyous about that thing that's happening. But I want to like that thing that's more important, right? I'm thinking about this in context of a lot of what I learned in acting. And I was just thinking about this on my way over here too. Like two essential things about acting are really knowing how to listen and really knowing what things mean to you. And that second part of really knowing what things mean to you, I think has a lot to do with what you crawl through glass for. Because that was my experience with especially this one particular teacher who was like, man, we hammered away on this thing like day after day after day after day. Because it was like, build this into it was sort of just like build this into how you operate. You got to know what you would crawl through glass for. You got to really fucking know what that stuff is, because that's going to do something to you that is a little bit beyond your control. Like it's beyond your intellectual faculties, right? And I've seen this in classrooms before where I've had a student say, it's like, okay, so like, tell me about the circumstance of this scene that you've created. Like what's going on, what's happening, what just happened. And there's a whole story, about what's going on, about what's happened. And on one level, you could just listen to it and you go, oh yeah, that all sounds really good. But the thing is like, yeah, but nothing happened. Nothing happened to you up there in the performance. It didn't do anything to you. It didn't, like, the idea of it sounds like it could be something, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's anything. Because it didn't do anything to you, right? Like you're saying, you got to be the first audience member. It's got to do something to you first. And then maybe it'll do something to me as an audience member. There's a very powerful relationship that goes on that way, right? It's part of the agreement that the artist, that the actor is doing, in order for something that might be art to happen. It's like, you've got to go there. You've got to go and feel that, experience that. You've got to be coming in with something that is real. You got to come in with something that is elemental to you. And that takes work. Like, I remember, like, just for myself working through that stuff and really, and watching other people go through it. It's like, there's finding the things that you're truly, really connected with, right? And what was interesting is, for most people, it was other people, right? Usually like maybe a handful of people that people found that they have a deep connection to, a deep sort of relationship with, that you could imagine, and this is very, I'm giving the Cliff Notes version of this thing, right? But like, you can imagine some scenario where you put a loved one, a family member, a somebody in some sort of situation, right? Where you would do just about fucking anything, right? And that, for the actor at least, does something to your whole emotional life. It just makes you come alive and reactive, responsive. And it's something that has really nothing to do with your intellect whatsoever, right? Like, it's because it's not controlled. It is something that is, like I was saying before, wild. It's like you're trying to tap into what is the wild shit that's inside of me, that's just like running amok in here, because it's not neat and contained and safe. It's the stuff that makes me just want to like go into a complete fucking rampaging rage. It's the stuff that makes me want to just crawl into a ball and just cry my face out. Like, this is not neat. This is not nice. This is not contained. This is not intellectual. This is, like you were saying, like it's messy, it's dirty, it's getting into it. And it reminds me of something I remember from Daniel Day-Lewis in an interview. He said he called acting mining in the muck. Because he said it's like, I don't like talking about, because it's so unscientific. He's like, it's mining in the muck. You're getting down into it, and it's messy and it's dirty, and it's just like, it's not nice, neat little piles that are coming out. It's you got to just dive in and get yourself covered in whatever's down there, and see what happens to you when you do that. And you don't always know. And this is like that. And there's an aliveness again that comes with that, right? I know, like, for even just the work of an actor, there's such a, like, it's a captivating aliveness that starts to happen in a person, because as an audience, you go like, something's going on over there. Something real is happening with this person. They're not some bullshitter up there just trying to convince me that they feel this way, that there's something really going on. They're not convincing me of anything, because something's really happening to them. And I feel like part of the plague of our culture and our society is that we've cut ourselves off from that shit. We've like, that's a problem, and it's not a problem. It's a part that's actually, it's begging to be given its space.
Yeah, well, one thing too is, I think being, like, having this raw, wild emotion isn't about using it as a currency to, like, get something either. Like, just because you're struggling or you're suffering or you're feeling some pain, like, it doesn't mean that you get to, like, just go like, oh, I get this because I feel this pain. And then you get in this competition with people about, oh, I have more pain than you. Like, none of that matters. It's irrelevant. Like, it's just like, that's another part of the problem of this whole thing, like these suffering contests that people get into. And I want to say that, like, suffering and pain are not the same thing. Because you can have a tremendous amount of pain and barely suffer at all. And you can have a very little amount of pain and suffer a whole lot. And I would argue that, in art at least, if you want the audience to feel, have the character go through pain and allow the audience to suffer for them. Do not let the character suffer, because that's painful for the audience. You know what I'm saying? Because like one of the things too is, you were pointing out that, like we were kind of talking this back and forth about you need to feel it first. Feeling doesn't mean showing. I think that's another element to keep in mind. Some of the most powerful scenes in stories, it looks like the character is showing no emotion. But the thing is that because they're not showing emotion and we know that it's elemental and real for them, we feel for them. And actually, those are much more powerful scenes. I talked about this, about Good Will Hunting. There's the scene in Good Will Hunting where he cries to his therapist. It's not your fault scene with Sean. Will cries in Sean's shoulder. Very powerful, very cool scene. I did not find that scene emotional for me, but it was captivating and cathartic for him as a character and me getting to experience that. And there's a necessity for it. The scene that makes me emotional, and I'm sure if I watched it again would make me emotional again, is the scene with him and Skylar. And Will is fighting and he's angry and he's trying to be strong. And all I'm seeing is this little kid who's just got a broken fucking heart. And that made me cry. That got me because I get that he's not going there. He's not suffering about it. He's trying not to suffer about it. And in a way, as an audience, we suffer for him because we know, we're like, man, she loves you. Like, just tell her you love her. Just fucking be vulnerable. But it's absolutely not possible for him in that moment, in that scene. And I think it's very important to keep this in mind as we're talking about and navigating the elemental. The elemental is not always a catharsis. And the catharsis is a word that I know a lot of people don't necessarily know, so I will explain as best I can. A catharsis is quite often the moment where you have released and you have let go and you have allowed yourself to finally feel the thing that was not allowed to be felt. It's finally you hit a point of acceptance and a point of release. And the catharsis usually happens at the end of a story. It's where we go, oh, okay, fine. He finally, or she finally beat the thing, like they can relax, they can be in love now, they can do that. That's the catharsis, right? The catharsis is a necessity in a lot of storytelling. It's a necessity we have to eventually reach catharsis with most things because they build up inside of us. But what makes us emotional, what is actually some of the most powerful stuff, is when we're so blocked up and we can't have that catharsis, when we're trying to be strong, when we're actually pushing through that emotion. And this is what I'm talking about this crawling through glass for the thing that you're trying to do, the thing you're trying to protect, the thing you're trying to go for. In the scene where Will and Skylar are fighting, if you haven't seen Good Will Hunting, get on it. It's a great movie, like honestly, just so good. And I'm not ruining the scene. I think you'll just like it more when you watch it. But when the scene with him and Skylar in her dorm room, when she wants him to move to California with him and he's unwilling to do that, it's heartbreaking because Will is willing to crawl through glass to protect his heart because it's been so hurt and so damaged as a child. And he knows that she could destroy him. She's trying to say, I love you. She's trying to say, is this relationship enough for us to have the legs to be the real thing? She's not hearing, so it's heartbreaking for her too, because what we hear on her side is she's hearing that he doesn't love her and she doesn't matter to him. And that's all she wants. And if you look at her backstory and what happened with her parents and where she comes from and why it's so important for her, why she's extending him such a big olive branch, because she truly is, because she knows that he's lied. She's accepted him for all his flaws. She knows so much more about him than he's even realized. And she's trying to let him know that she loves him for who she knows him to be more than he's told her. And he can't hear it. And it's just fucking heartbreaking. And the thing is that she's willing to crawl through broken glass to try and truly be vulnerable in love. And this is a great scene. These are two counterpoints that are against each other. And, you know, and this is life, right? And so the thing is let me wind this right back to the first thing you said when I passed the mic over to you. You talked about pain and love. You cannot love unless you're willing to experience pain. And when you decide that you don't want to feel pain anymore, you also stranglehold and kill love in your life. Love comes with pain. And I can tell you, like, one of my first and biggest heartbreaks literally felt like my heart was being ripped into while I was alive inside my chest. I was paralyzed. I couldn't move. I was like, it was like a ripping feeling, almost like I was sitting there totally conscious having open heart surgery. That sounds dramatic. That's what it felt like. I was like immobile for at least, I remember, like 15 or 20 minutes. I was like, what the fuck is happening to me? I couldn't fucking like do it. And then I remember I like let out this like war cry to try to do anything to just stop this brutal pain that was in my chest. And you could go, man, I never want to experience that. But I'll tell you, man, that's love. That's the other side of love. And the more you're willing to go into that pain, the more you're willing to love. And really, that love is, when you feel love, it's so fucking beautiful and amazing that, you know, that is so worth it. And then the question is, after you've had that heartbreak, are you willing to love again? That takes courage. That's when things start to get really interesting, you know? Mm-hmm. But anyway, the point is that, yeah, it's elemental, man. And this stuff is, you know, someone who hasn't experienced heartbreak, this is all just theory to them. Me talking like this, oh yeah, what are you, a wimp? Or your heart broke? It's like, yeah, well, yeah, maybe you haven't loved. Maybe you haven't really put yourself out there. Maybe you have never taken a chance yet. So yeah, it looks weak to you, but I tell you, that's the most courageous thing I've ever done. More courageous than anything. Nothing has ever hurt as bad as that kind of heartbreak. You know? And I've been through some pretty brutally painful experiences, but yeah. But it's a beautiful one too.
Oh yeah, I remember the first time I went through a heartbreak, and it was like, there was a part of me that's just like, this is so cliche because it's everything that you've heard. Yeah. It's everything that you've heard before, but you're just like, oh, but now I get it. Yeah. And I remember just being like, I can't fucking listen to music right now because it was like every song is about love in some way. And I'm just like, I can't deal with this shit right now. I don't want to hear it. And yeah, just like, oh, the heart, like it does. It's just like the pain in the heart and like in your chest is real, you know? And there's a part of me that's just like so grateful in retrospect to have gone through it, because it's, again, yeah, it's not, I'm not just some propagandist, you know, talking about heartbreak. It's just like, I know what heartbreak feels like. Like I've actually experienced that before, and can empathize and understand what's going on for people in a deeper way. There was something in, I want to come back, because you brought up Good Will Hunting a few times now, and I'm like, I've got to just go and rewatch it again because it's such a fantastic movie. It's one of those ones I continually go back to. So now is one of those times to go back to it. But a scene that I remember from it, and spoiler alert again for anybody who hasn't seen it, but there's a scene where Will and Robin Williams' character, I can't remember what his character's name is. Sean. Okay. Where Will and Sean are having a conversation in Sean's office, and Will's talking a little bit about his dad, who would come home drunk and was abusive. And he would say, and he says like, and he's like, and he would tell me, like, It's like the belt or the bat, right? And it's just like, whew, right? Like as an audience member, you're getting like a sense of like what this was like, right? But it's the next thing that to me is just like that. It always stood out to me because Sean asked him, like, which one did you take? You know, and he says the bat.
You got to go with the belt on that one.
Oh, he's got to. Oh, is that how it comes out?
Yeah, something like that.
He's like, out of the belt and that, and he's like, and he says, no, I took the bat. He's like, why did you take the bat? And he says, because fuck him, that's why. And it's like, whoa, like you just that thing, and especially because there's, you know, whatever Matt Damon, the work that he did, you know, coming into that, like there's something very fucking real going on for him in that moment, right? That's he's connected to that in some way in that scene. And that just like what he says there, like that's everything, you know, like there's just, and the scene that you're referring to, like it's connected into all of that too. Like because it says so much about his life and who he is, right? The person that he is in this moment, right? And there's also coming back to it. It's like, that's not a rational thing. Like that, it's exactly the thing we're talking about. That's not a rational intellectual thing to do. Because he says, you got to go with the belt on that one, right? Yeah, that's the rational thing to do. But the real thing to do was the bat. Right? Like there was something about that was just like, that was like, and I don't even know how to put words to that line, to that, what he did, you know, in that moment, even though it's a fictional story, but there's still something about it that it just, I remember it from the first time that I saw that movie, that line, you know, and it's like, why? And I'm sure for many other people, they can say, oh yeah, I remember that scene. I remember that line. Why? Why do we remember that? Because there's something profound in there. There's something elemental. There's something that it hits about something that's within us, right? That's so, I don't know, that's so powerful, that is so transcendent, that is so something more than just our ideas about ourselves, right? There's something so much more extraordinary that's also going on at the same time in there. There was something else I wanted to say as well, but I can't think of it right now. But I don't know, like there's this thing of that, I jotted this down where it's like, I wrote down, acting is not nice, neat, or tidy. Because this is an idea of something that I want to explore a little bit more on my own. But I think that has probably broader implications. But this thing, like, yeah, there's not, I remember so much training that was like trying to make it acting nice, neat, and tidy. You just understand these things and you chunk. You just put these little, this little, a lot of people say color by numbers or something, which was something that I kind of felt at a certain point in time. But it's, this desire for us to just make things nice, neat, and tidy all the time. And there's a cost to it. There's just such a terrible cost to it. Because, the cost to me as an actor was that it was just like, I just felt dead. Yeah. I felt dead as an actor. I felt, what am I doing here? Like, I don't feel connected to what I'm doing. I feel like I'm just trying to do everything right. I don't feel like there's any creativity that's going on anymore. I was so disillusioned by what I was doing, what I had dedicated at that time of my life. I was like, this is what I've dedicated my life to. What even is this? Yeah. Is this what it is? And I had to step away from the acting class for a long time. I had to step away from it. And I didn't even know what it was that I needed, what it was that I was looking for. And I've never thought about it in this context until this conversation. But it's like the thing that I was looking for was that wildness, was that elemental thing. Because I'm like, this is not those things. This is not me losing myself. This is me just being more self-conscious than I've ever been. And what I ended up finding when I did start going back into acting classes was finding some teachers who, I don't even know if they would have described what they were doing in this way, but there was like a return to a kind of wildness, a return to a kind of, yeah. You've learned all these tools and techniques and all of these things. I even had a teacher, Ted, he said, it's like, I don't think technically I have anything I can teach you. I remember that being a confusing thing at the time, just being like, what do you mean? What else is there? He said, there's nothing technical. He's like, I don't know if I have anything technically that I can teach you. And the rest of it from there was like, it was in many ways, now how do we actually start to dismantle all of that? Because now that is now the thing that stands in your way from going to the next place. Into going to that place of losing yourself in that thing. How do we now just come back to a wild place that is just connected and raw and a little irrational and is not necessarily like intellectually based on something, but it doesn't matter because it's connected to something more fundamental, And I say that stuff and I almost feel a little bit silly saying it because it's just like, well, then what even is it? It's like, you start to get into a territory where it becomes almost impossible to articulate it, right? Because again, I think this thing that we're talking about doesn't fit into boxes, right? But it's real. One of those things that I come across in life from time to time, and I say, I don't know what it is, but I know that it is. And that's all I can really say. It's like, I know it's a real fucking thing because I've experienced it and it's real. It's more real than the life that I normally occupy in so many extents. That's part of, to me, I think what the draw of acting is for me and for so many people is because it's like, yeah, I know it's all an act, but there's something that happens in there when I'm really connected to it that makes me feel alive like I'm not normally. That makes me, that I feel more human than I ever feel in my normal life from most of the time. And I can go into it and I can just have this incredible experience of something and go, holy shit, what was that? Right? And I can kind of walk away from it and have had that experience and have had just this charge going through me. And I don't actually had to have literally gone through some sort of horrible thing or crazy thing, but I had a weird kind of joy touching on it in some way.
Well, there's so much that we've covered today, and one thing that I do want to say just before we wrap this stuff up is I wanted to just quickly dive into a little bit about how to maybe make this somewhat practical. And I know that almost sounds counter to what we're talking about, but in the sense that I don't want people to walk away from this and be like, okay, well, that's all great, but what do I do with that? What I would say is that, I guess I'll start here. If you find yourself running away, distracting yourself and doing something that gives you mindless comfort, the first thing to do is to identify that that's happening and stop. Example for me is, a few years ago, I downloaded TikTok and it started out from just friends sending me a few videos here and there. But then it started to become this thing where every now and then I'm like, oh, I'm gonna look at TikTok. And then an hour later, I'm like, what the hell? And I don't feel great afterwards. And a bunch of it was crap. Some of it was great, But then it's just, and I'm just like, what am I doing? And also I'm like, I don't know if I like what this is doing to my head either. And the other night I was just like going, or in the morning, I woke up in the morning and I'm like, I should just delete this fucking app. And I was like, well, do it. And then the thought of it brought up like discomfort, right? It brought up this feeling of like, I don't want to delete it. Well, whatever. Just like, let's keep it. All the justifications. I'm like, nope, delete it. If you really, really want it back later, you could download it again. But like, if you really know this isn't good for you, delete it. So went to it, deleted it, just took it off. Just don't. And you know what? And this has been a few days, several days of just not having it. And that is an example, I think, of sometimes this visceral thing, where your mind is going to rationalize and it's going to justify and it's going to try to keep you in the comfort habit, right? And that's where you just got to go like, no, just stop. Like it could be smoking, drinking, doing something, eating sugary food, whatever it is. Just, okay, done. You know what I mean? Like, and this is where you'll feel the experience. It's one thing to just say, I'm done. I'm not eating any more sugary food. No. You have to go into your cupboards, go into your fridge, go in, grab every sugary piece of junk that you have, bag opened or not, and it goes right now. And you're going to experience the pain of, I'm wasting money. You're not wasting money. You know this shit is poison. You know it's bad for you. You know it's hurting you. You know it's putting on the pounds you don't want to be putting on. You know it's hurting your heart. You know it's doing all this shit that you shouldn't be doing to yourself. And the pain of getting rid of the comfort, this is what I'm talking about. Purpose gets you to push through comfort pain. And there's a term for it. It's called you're in an uncomfortable comfort zone. You know you're uncomfortable, but you're too comfortable to do anything about it. And that is robbing your life. And if you let it exist for too long, you'll wake up one day and you won't have any more time left. And it's hard. It's a hard feeling. And like, this is just one little thing in my life, but I like, you know what? That is not good for me. I don't need that anymore. And I need to get rid of it. And you know what? After I did it, something happened inside of me. Some kind of thing happened because I physically did the thing. I got rid of the thing, the drug, right? Because it's like a drug, right? And the thing is I got rid of it, and it made me go, hey, I can do this. I can take control of my life. I can stop the thing that I know I need to not do. You know what? I've been fine without it. I've been fine. But there was this fear in the moment. Oh, what if I get bored? What if I just want something to do? Whatever. And I'll admit, there's been a few inclinations like, oh man, it'd be nice to be able to do this. I'm like, whatever. What are you going to do instead? We're not doing that anymore. What are you going to do instead? And I'll go and I'll do something else. Today, instead of looking at TikTok, which I might have done, I went and took the dog for a walk. And then I walked down the street and I met up with a friend and we talked for an hour. And, and I actually generated some business for my courses by doing that. And some good things happened. And I connected with people. And then, their parents were there. So I connected with their parents. Haven't seen them in like 25 years. Like a bunch of cool things happened. All because I deleted this fucking app from my phone. You know what I'm saying? And so this is what I'm talking about. Get the junk food out of your house. Take those pack of cigarettes. Throw them, like flush them. They cannot be accessible anymore, right? If it's alcohol, dump it down the sink right now. And if you can't, this is what I'm talking about. This is exactly what this conversation is. It's elemental, isn't it? You can't do it because you don't have enough purpose. And if you don't have enough purpose, I'm telling you right now, it's destroying your fucking life. And that's the bottom line. It just is. It's not debatable. It doesn't care whether you think it is or not. You can't argue with me because it's not an argument with me. It's an argument with yourself. And, and you just gotta, if it's a toxic relationship and you gotta leave, call them up right now and say, I've thought about it. I don't want to be in this relationship anymore. I was waiting to talk to you in person, but I'm telling you now on the phone, it is over. Or pack your shit up and move out of that fucking place. Whatever you have to do, just get it done now. And you'll be on the other side of that bridge. and then you're going to be free. And I know every time I've done something like this in my life, something fucking great soon follows. But it's so hard to take that first step. So if I could give anybody like some practical advice about getting real, because that's kind of what we're talking about, I want you to get real. I want you to turf the junk food, flush the cigarettes, pour the alcohol down the sink, dump the pills, fucking throw your system out the window that you're video gaming like 17 hours a day and you know you should be creating your business or building your creative art or whatever it might be. And I know that's going to be brutally hard for you. Maybe that's not the best approach, but you need to take drastic action sometimes. And this is where it's going to begin. So, maybe you don't throw your machine if it's worth hundreds of dollars. Maybe you put it up on Marketplace and try to sell it. If it's really worth some money, don't throw it out the window. But just this is the essence of what I'm trying to say. So I don't know if you have any practical advice, Evan, but I wanted us both to maybe share some things that we could it's not just for everyone else, our listeners, but it's also for me. Because I'll just say this before I pass it on to you. Deleting that app was a small thing. It was not that hard, but it was painful and it reminded me, hey, Brandon, you could stop every bad thing you have in your life that you do that is innocuous and you let yourself get away with. And that was one thing, and it made me feel a little more powerful the next day. And it was real because I did feel the pain of deleting it.
I think that it's important that what you're bringing up in terms of, finding what are some practical things within this. And I think that for most of us, probably it's distractions. I think today, your example of TikTok, and I've never had TikTok, but I know I spend probably way too much time on YouTube. I can say that much. These are things that are facsimiles of life.
Big word. What is that?
Facsimiles, they're it's like a secondhand version. It's like it's not the real thing. It's a fake. Instead of watching people actually being out there and doing life, which you could argue some of that because a lot of people with they're doing things to create content. There's a reason for it, right? Which is part of what I was going to say actually, is do something that's unreasonable. Is a way to get in touch with the elemental a little bit. It's like you have an impulse to do something, it's unreasonable. And how often do we squash that? Like, to put in a very particular example of this was some years ago, but it still stands out in my mind because it's weird little ways in which, again, we're trying to make things nice, neat, and tidy. We were out at a friend's cabin out in the woods, this beautiful lake. And it was the evening, sun was going down, and we were all just outside. And the lake was it was like glass, and there was just the sunsetting glow off of the water. And I was just like, wow, how amazing would that be to swim in there right now? And then my mind's just like, yeah, but it's late, and you go, you have to get in your swim shorts, and, and then and then you're going to be wet, you're going to be dry. And I was just like, and I had at that moment just, the other part of me won over, and it just went like, shut up. Let's do this. Yeah. Right. And I did. I went, it wasn't a lot of work to do. And I got in, and it was amazing. It was just a glorious, one of the best lake swims I've ever had in my entire life. And I'll remember it forever, going and doing, because it was something so beautiful that it's hard to believe that it actually happened. It seemed to me like something out of a storybook. But I did it. It was a real experience that I had. So yes, it was unreasonable for me to do it. It was late, and it was, all of the stuff. I was not ready and dressed for it, blah, 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 blah. All kinds of reasons. Fuck them. do some unreasonable things, because those unreasonable things are often what life is all about. And just in terms of some more practical things, like, we talk about just getting out into nature in any kind of way is a way to do it. Next time you do it, leave the phone at home. Don't have it with you. It's insane how much of a difference it makes. I know how often for me it's like, and again, I can come up with reasons like, oh, I should have my phone on me, like for in case there's some sort of emergency or whatever. It's like, it's going to be okay. Like just leave it and go out for a walk it doesn't even necessarily have to be nature. Nature's nice if it's around you, but like just not having that distraction. So it's really just you being with yourself and whatever's around you. We used to happen all the time in life, and we don't even have that level. So that's, I think, a simple way to do it. And, and actually just getting in contact with the actual natural elements can be helpful, I think, as well. Get your hands in some literal dirt, stick your face in a creek, like it's like, just come into contact with like the world, as it is, without any sort of, that doesn't have any kind of agenda of any sort. It's just it's being. Nature's always just being, in any way that you can bring yourself in line with its being a bit more. It can teach you things and it can show you things. That's not woo-woo shit. There's something real that's going on there. There's something real in that relationship that we have with nature. We came from it. So there's a deep relationship that we have with that. So those would be just a couple of my things. But yeah, I think putting the social media, going on a media cleanse, something I was reading about recently, like making a commitment to just go, okay, what's your big thing that you go to, and commit, like put it down in writing, do something interesting, but you got to really do it. It made me think of that saying, if your right hand causes your left hand to stumble or something, then cut it off. Right? That's some biblical shit again. But it's like, and it's I remember growing up, I used to think that was like a literal thing. I was like, oh, that seems severe. But it's like, no, that's just, it's because it's like, it's what you're saying. It's like, no, if there's something in your life that is pulling you away from what you know to be true, what you know to be real, the person that you are, the calling that, there's so many things that I could go into, but if there's something that is that you have in your life, a distraction, an addiction, a thing, it's like, this is a message of, don't screw around with this shit. Don't play lightly with this shit. You gotta have a heavy hand with this stuff. If this stuff, you got a porn addiction, you got, you gotta cut that shit out. You gotta say, I can't watch that shit anymore. This shit's rotting my brain. And it can't be like, you gotta do whatever you gotta do to not have those, to not sabotage yourself in there, because we can do that, and you can do that with food. You can do that with, we can do it with almost anything. You can do it with work. Sometimes you gotta be real strong and clear with yourself about these things. So, and once you start doing that, you put yourself back into contact with the real you that's going on and the real world that's going on.
I will say this, I'm going to share the beer, but there's a couple things I just need to say before we do wrap this baby up. One is that if you're always pursuing pleasure, and that's all you're doing, and you're always avoiding pain in the pursuit of pleasure, you probably have a problem somewhere, or several. And so that's a good warning sign. Don't make pleasure the thing that you're always after, and don't make pain the thing you're always trying to avoid. So, if I could sum it up in that way. But sometimes pleasure is okay, and I want to just give an example of that. The lake story, I was there for that one, right? Yeah. I remember that moment very vividly because I remember how inspiring it was. And I almost jumped in as well. But I was like, I'm just doing it because Evan did it. But I was like, it's pretty cool. He's really fucking enjoying that. But also, I wanted to say about that particular thing, the reason why you remember it is partly because you crossed that threshold of pain. And that's the thing is like, deleting this stupid TikTok app was minor, but it was big for me. And the thing is sometimes these things we're doing, you might think, oh, it's just such a little thing. If it's big for you, that's all that matters. Evan jumping into a lake was big for him. Me deleting TikTok was big for me. Last night, I worked really late, and we had a really nice day, but I missed the sunset. And I like to go out for a motorcycle ride during sunset, but I couldn't because I was working and it was late anyway. And it had rained, but so the streets are wet. It was cold and dark. Streets were wet, but it was it was kind of like nice out. And after work, I was like kind of driving my bike through the night. And I have this music playlist I created of like just night, like riding songs. It's fucking epic. And, I'm driving along and I just fucking go, you know what? I'm not going home yet. And I just went for a ride up the coast in the dark and I had the streets to myself. And then in my mind, it did the same thing it did when you were talking about jumping in the lake. Oh, it's late. What if you slip? What if you crash? Like no one will find you. It'll be too cold to like walk home if you had to do that. All this stuff is just playing, right? All these reasons not to live. And I'm just like, yeah, okay. Well, let's just be a little careful. Let's just keep our eye on the ball, whatever. And it was one of the most beautiful rides. It was so friggin' awesome. And then I came back, and when I came back to my house after it was done, and I went off for like an extra 20, 30 minutes, I don't know, it wasn't even that big of an excursion. I came back, I felt so fulfilled, so complete, so just like, man, what a great ride. And I could have just driven home out of comfort, just out of, it's late, I'm tired, I should just go to bed, all of these things. But I did the thing that was truly in my heart, and it felt super fulfilling. And this is what I'm talking about. That was elemental for me. And that might be a ride that I won't forget. You know what I'm saying? So it's not always about just doing this thing that's like painful. Sometimes it's about doing the thing that you want to do that's pleasurable, but you just keep stopping yourself from doing it because you have all these reasons not to do it. So I wanted to put that in the pot as well. Okay, beer, and we'll close this out. All right, so this beer is from Slackwater Brewing. It's called the Idleback Amber Ale with Cascade hops. It's got a big fish gold can. It's been a pretty good brew. I've enjoyed it. I mean, it's I don't know, it's a good little amber ale. I don't know what else to say. You got any thoughts on that one, Evan, or you want to add anything? I'll pass it over.
I mean, yeah, it's good. It's good. It's definitely maltier. Malty. Yeah. It's definitely maltier than anything I've had for a while.
Yeah.
But it's good. It's not overly, because sometimes like if it's too malty, it's like just like a little bit, I don't know, like there's too much of an after taste that's kind of, I find, unpleasant. But this has been nice. It's good.
Yeah.
It's good.
All right, I'll close it up.
All right.
Yeah, I would say really malty. And I would say it kind of works because it's like fall and it's getting colder. But this wouldn't be something I'd want to have over the summer so much for me. But it's a good way to describe it. It's the most malty pale, what is it? Amber ale. It's the most malty amber ale I think I've ever had that I can think of. Okay, my final thoughts are this. You haven't made a decision until you've taken action. That's a Tony Robbins. But it's true. You really haven't made a decision until you've taken an action. So the moment you know you need to make a decision, if you want to make it elemental, if you want to make it real, you got to do something. So you have the recognition. If you say, I'm doing this, you have not done it until you've taken action. The decision is not real. So it's just talk, and talk is cheap. So what I would suggest, if there's anything that you need to make a decision on, and there's any reason why you can't really do it till tomorrow, do something right now that will make it a little easier for tomorrow. Just do something right now. And, you you're going to find out how powerful you are when you start to learn to live by the principle of right now. Not even in a minute from now. I'm doing this right now. You know? Like literally you're like, you're having a beer and you're thinking, man, I really got to stop drinking. You dump that beer out right there, right in front. You don't even finish it. That's decisive, powerful action. That's the type of stuff that you would do if you needed to do that, if you knew you needed to do that, right? And not everybody needs to do that. But if for you need to do that, you do that. If you're eating a bag of chips or a bowl of chips and you're like, oh, I got to stop eating junk food, you literally, as you're eating the bowl of chips, you dump it in the trash. You don't wait till you finish the bowl. You get rid of the bowl now, because you need that pain point. You need that point of, is this real? Because if you finish the bowl and you say, I won't eat the bowl of chips next time, you will, because it was never real. It was just bullshit. You were just talking. And this is what I think this conversation is so great for, is that every time that you tell yourself you'll do something and you don't, you convince yourself you're not powerful. But when you do actions like this, like you're smoking or something, I don't know, I don't smoke, but you're smoking and you go, I really shouldn't be smoking. And you just lit your cigarette, you crush it out right there. And then you dump the pack down, you crush them up into a million pieces so they can't be smoked by anybody, you know? And you walk away, you do something, like you got to do something. And the more real you make it, what you're going to tell yourself is, I'm powerful. I can do things. I can move myself. I can move the world. And I think that is what is elemental, that you have power and can move yourself and your life and others in more ways than you think. And point in case, Evan, that time that you did jump in the lake, I know I didn't jump in the lake, but it did move me. And I've never forgotten that whole experience. And I never forgot the look of the lake, because I remember you standing there going, I want to jump in there. And you're like, I'm going to do it. And I remember that, all that stuff happening, because to me, it made an impact on me. I didn't have to jump in the lake to get the lesson, and that's what happens. Like if you're smoking and you and your friends are saying, oh, we should really quit smoking. And you go, you know what, fuck this. And you crush your cigarette in front of them. And then, you start dumping your pack and they go, oh, wait, you can't, what a waste. You go, see, you're not committed to smoking. You're not committed to quitting smoking. You're committed to smoking. Dump your pack. Let's quit. Let's do this. Let's do this right fucking now. That's what you're made of. You got to teach yourself that. And it's going to take going through that little bit of pain, that little bit of bullshit. You're going to convince yourself not to take the action, right? So that's the best I can give everybody. And I'm going to practice the same this week.
Oh man, I've got a bunch of thoughts going in here for closing this one down. Something that occurs to me with what you're talking about, like with your motorcycle ride and even, hey, you need to stop doing this thing. And my own story, and here's like, I'm realizing is and with the practical side of this as well, it's spontaneity. There's a lot about this that's about spontaneity, a spontaneous action that can be so powerful. And there's something else you said before too, which was like, you said reasons not to live, all of these reasons not to live, right? To go and do the spontaneous thing. Oh no, I can't, for practical concerns and stuff. It's like, yeah, but sometimes it's those spontaneous things. That's where life is happening. In fact, typically that's where life is happening. I know this to be true about how great art happens and how creativity happens. Real creativity happens spontaneously. And getting comfortable with that, it's like, oh, okay, and this is not to say that those spontaneous things are always going to lead you to something pleasurable.
Yeah.
Right? But it will lead you to something pleasurable eventually, because I can look back on spontaneous things. It's like, oh, that didn't exactly work out, but I look back at it and I smile because it's like, holy shit, I was alive. Why the hell do people do the polar bear swim? Oh my God. People feel alive when they do that. it's not a rational thing to do, even though we still try to do that shit. We still try to be like, well, there's a lot of health benefits to it. It's like, it's like we need to have these like ridiculous reasons for everything that we do, which is why another reason why I said do something unreasonable, right? But another way of saying it's like get a little bit more spontaneous. Listen to that spontaneous impulse. And the thing is too, is that this is something that's a part of all of us. It's not, you don't have to go and get it. It's already there. It's already in you. It's built in. It's elemental. It's there. It's about removing the layers that have cut you off from it, removing the layers of conditioning that we've all been handed to get to it, which is why, put the device away, get these distractions out. And look, we're all going to make mistakes. You're going to burn the food or the cigarettes or whatever, which I think is also great because it's ritual, right? Those things are powerful to do as well. It's interesting that we have these little things with the elements, right? Where we're saying goodbye to something. It's like, we're going to burn it. We're going to throw it to the wind. Yeah. We're going to put it, tie a note to a rock, and we're going to throw it in the water. Like, we have these things that are tied to the elements. Like, the elements can do something with this shit, right? Like, we can be healed by them in some kind of profound way. Yeah. But anyhow, I digress on all of that stuff. But remove those distracting layers, right? Can help you get back to that spontaneous part of you, because that little thing in your pocket, I'm keying in on it because it's the one that I think most of us have to deal with. Most of us have an addiction to that thing. And it's like, just put it away and just engage real contact. There's no taking pictures of anything and sharing it with people. Just go and experience stuff. And when there's no one else to experience it with, there's no following to send it to. It's just you. And it doesn't mean that it has to be you all the time, but it needs to be you some of the time. Yeah. And I think that's, kind of the crazy part of this is that, like, I'm just talking about my own life right now. That's so rarely some of the time. It is so much all of the time that I am, I have this level of distraction with me all the time. Like, it's just, so make it at least some of the time that you are this person who doesn't have this distraction, this weird sort of filter that you're going around with, and just get in contact with your own deep relationship with life and with the world. Thank you for listening in on our conversation today. We hope you found something helpful that you can carry forward with you. Head over to our website, wayoftheartist.com, for more free exclusive material and learn about the show. If you haven't already, please support us by subscribing to the show, sharing it with people you know, and keeping compassionate, creative conversation going.